What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. And as Congress skips town and runs out as fast as they can for their holiday weekend, we look closer and closer to a default. Yeah, you can see the headlines here quote, progress, but no deal as Washington barrels closer to a default. And now the Treasury Department is telling us what might happen in the case of a default. And then I'll let you know what the president is saying. So take a listen here.
Continue to work today. We'll continue to work through the night. There's no agreement. Look, it's not easy. This is a big issue, and it's not something you can solve easily. We want to make sure it's worthy of the American people, and we'll continue working until we get it done.
That was House Speaker Kevin McCarthy last night at the Capitol, stressing a deal not yet done on the debt ceiling, but both sides say progress has been made. The negotiators meeting again today. Joining us now, live from the White House, is Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Wally Adeyemo. Wally, great, Mr. Deputy Secretary, great to see you this morning. So let's talk about just where we are. We're less than a week to the deadline. What can you tell us about where things stand?
So I can say what you've largely already said, which is that progress has been made, but we need to take action immediately to make sure that we avoid defaulting on our nation's debt, but also on the money we owe to seniors and to veterans and others. As you mentioned, the Secretary said that it is highly likely by early June we will no longer have the resources to meet our commitments to our creditors, but also to our seniors, to our veterans, and other Americans. And Congress needs to act to make sure that that's avoided.
So we hear a lot about sort of these big picture 30,000-foot ideas that it would be catastrophic, that it would be a financial calamity were the nation to default. But break it down for us into like real world examples for everyday Americans. If this were to happen next week, less than a week away, how would it change their lives each and every day?
So let's just go back to 2011. In 2011, although at the last minute they avoided default, the stock market fell by about 20%. If you have a 401k, that's going to impact your 401k. A few weeks ago, the United States government auctioned off bills, and we paid $80 million more to sell that debt than we would have. That's $80 million we're not spending on your children's education, on infrastructure. As you know, when you want to borrow to buy a house or to pay for your small business, the rate that you borrow at is set off of the rate that the government borrows at plus something. If the government's rate of borrowing goes up because we defaulted on our debt, that means it's going to be harder for you to buy a home, for you to get a car, to get a loan for your small business. So this is already having real world impacts, and they will only get worse the closer we get to the deadline, which the Secretary said is highly likely to be in early June.
So, Wally, so many people, this is Jen, by the way, so many people have, so many people have June 1st circled on their calendar as if we're kind of like all fall off a cliff into the ocean after that day. What happens on June 1st? What should people be bracing for? And why is that the date on the calendar that people are so focused on?
So, Jen, you've been in government through a few of these when we've gone through periods where the Congress has had to lift the debt limit. And one of the things that is important for everybody to know is that the government makes billions of dollars of payments each day and takes in money. It's incredibly hard to predict exactly when the date is going to be. What the Secretary has said that it's highly likely that it's going to be in early June, that we no longer have the resources to meet our payments. And what does it mean for us to not be able to meet our payments? It's not just payments, as I said earlier, to creditors who lend us money, but it's payments to our troops who are get a salary from the U.S. government, to our veterans who are getting veterans benefits, to Social Security recipients. And if we don't have authorization from Congress, we'll be forced to default on all of our bills to those individuals once we run out of resources.
So you'll notice that he mentions payments to Social Security and veterans a couple different times there, and payments to the military, all potentially here at risk. This is coming directly from, he's the Deputy Treasury Secretary right underneath Janet Yellen. Janet Yellen, of course, has mentioned this here before. Here's what the president is saying. Take a listen here.
Default puts all that at risk. Congressional leaders understand that, and they've all agreed there will be no default. And it's time for Congress to act now. Now, I want to be clear that the negotiations we're having with Speaker McCarthy is about the outlines of what the budget will look like, not about default. It's about competing visions for America. Under my administration, we've already cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion in our first 2 years. But Speaker McCarthy and I have a very different view of who should bear the burden of additional efforts to get our fiscal house in order. I don't believe the whole burden should fall on the backs of middle class and working class Americans. My House Republican friends disagree. Instead, Republicans passed a bill that would make huge cuts in important programs that millions of working and middle class Americans count on. Huge cuts in the number of teachers, police officers, Border Patrol agents, and increased wait times for Social Security claims. And I won't agree to that. I put forward a proposal that will cut spending by more than $1 trillion that freezes spending for the next 2 years. That's on top of the nearly $3 trillion in deficit reduction I previously proposed through a combination of spending cuts and new revenue raisers. I propose making the wealthy begin to pay their fair share, which will reduce the deficit, but it won't cut programs for hardworking Americans depending on it, those funds, in order to continue big tax returns for the wealthiest Americans, America and America's largest corporations. But we can reduce the deficit both in short term and long term with a combination of spending cuts on programs that help big oil and big pharma by closing tax loopholes and making the wealthy pay their fair share. I've reduced the deficit, I said, $1.7 trillion in my first 2 years without raising a cent and raising taxes above anyone making less than $400,000. The economy is growing. The only way to move forward is with a bipartisan agreement, and I believe we'll come to an agreement that allows us to move forward and that protects the hardworking Americans of this country.
Now, President Biden says, quote, "There will be no default." Of course, I think he's hoping that. We don't really know what's going to happen here in the future. Yeah, it's a lot of people kind of sitting here on pins and needles hoping this will happen. Of course, Congress has left the building. Yeah, and so we have really in limbo now. They're worried about the weekend. Hey, let's go out and have a party. You can't make this stuff up. It's literally unbelievable. You could see what they're worried about, right? So they're out for the long weekend, and literally, so June 1st is here on Thursday, and they're gonna be gone till Tuesday. Yeah. So good luck.
I bid you farewell and good luck, morons.
And don't forget here that Speaker Kevin McCarthy promised them that they would have 3 days to look over the bill. I don't know if how's that going to happen. They have to. In fact, I think they said they had to have it done by today, Friday, to have that done. But they're not. Congress is not even there to look it over. Yeah, and then don't forget here that the Senate. Remember, the House would have to vote on it one day. The Senate would have to vote on it another day. They have to do markup and write this bill up and stuff. And remember the Senate, they live in an old arcane society. They haven't even passed a bill where they can pass things remotely. Now, you would think that they would be back by then. But, it's kind of a cat and mouse thing over there. They have to be in person to vote in the Senate. The House can vote remotely, okay? Which you would think in today's day and age you can do that, right? No, not for the Senate. So, yeah, and then that's kind of like a little bit of a chess match there. So, like, hey, if somebody's out sick, Feinstein was here recently, or if someone's ill, has a family matter or something like that, takes a critical vote away from a Republican or a Democrat side sometimes. So I'll keep you up to date here. What do you think is going to happen? We'll see. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe down below. Click the bell icon so you don't miss out on any new videos here. Thanks for liking and sharing these videos. Here's some videos you should watch next. Congress just passed 2 major bills right before they left town, and you can see that here in this video. And banks are doing something major that's going to affect millions of Americans, and you can see it here in this video. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.